welcome to this, our fourth Back to Business webinar in partnership with Cisco Webex. We're live from the Nasdaq Dubai, as you can well see. My name's Tom Urquhart, part of the Business Breakfast Programme at Dubai Eye 103.8. We broadcast every morning from 6 in the morning. Joined this morning, though, by some of the UAE's most inventive business minds, all coming together to discuss what is a key topic to us and a key topic to many, a subject that comes up several times a day on our programme. It is the all-important P word, that is pivoting. Now, in this webinar, what we intend to do is we're going to look at a very particular type of pivot for you out there, the COVID solution that then becomes permanent, that becomes business as usual, as you like, or to coin another phrase that we use constantly on the programme, the new normal. Now, to join us to answer these rather sticky and knotty questions, and joining us virtually via Webex, we have, as I said, three inventive business minds bringing their experience to the floor. First up is the Vice President of F&B Strategy and Development for Europe, Middle East and Africa for Hilton, an experienced and seasoned hospitality executive with a wealth of international experience in a variety of channels, cuisines, operating platforms, and of course ownership styles. She was also included in the Women to Watch Hospitality, Travel and Leisure Index just last year. Absolute pleasure to be joined on this journey by Emma Banks. Emma, bless you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. We're also joined by the General Manager in the commercial sector for Spinneys Dubai LLC, where he leads the entire commercial and sourcing operation for both Spinneys and Waitrose across the UAE and Oman. In fact, in the last year, he's helped to lead Spinneys to a sustained record market share by implementing new ranging strategies, differentiating the product offerings, and focusing on a collaborative approach to working with suppliers. It is a pleasure to have with us for this one Tom Harvey. Tom, thanks so much indeed for being with us as well. And making up the panel for us this morning is Head of Collaboration for Cisco Middle East and Africa, where he leads a team of partnership experts responsible for driving customers' digital transformations, but also improving end-user collaboration experience. Head of Collaboration, Cisco Middle East and Africa, Ahmad Zureiki. Thank you so much indeed, Ahmad, for being with us. And Cisco are more than just our partners on this series, this webinar series. They are part of the solution for us all as well. It is software like theirs that is keeping business around the world communicating during these challenging times, digitally transforming and moving forward. So our thanks go to all the team at Cisco. So these are just a few of the themes I'll be covering with our panel. But watching us right now is an audience of invited guests. So hello to all of you for tuning in. And throughout this webinar, as with the previous, we're inviting you to ask your questions as well. Please do send them through to us via the chat function on your Cisco Webex system. So make sure you do send your questions, your comments or otherwise throughout. Okay, the last 8 months has seen companies getting creative, with their COVID solution. Emirates Airline pivoted by repurposing many of its Boeing 777s from passenger to cargo. We had Fine Tissues. They did a pivot by making face masks. And nearly every single luxury restaurant in the UAE was forced to pivot by providing takeaway services, including a couple not a million miles from where I am broadcasting here, Le Petit Maison downstairs, Koya, and not far from here as well. But as the pandemic progresses, and what we thought would only last months looks more likely to last, dare I say it, years or certainly longer than expected. How do you out there decide which bits of your business to hold on to retain, to keep, and which are now past their sell-by date and therefore need to be re-looked at? Well, in this session, we'll find out how our panelists made some difficult decisions when it came to realigning their particular businesses, how they simultaneously pivoted and protected their revenue streams. We'll also get practical advice as well, discuss what worked or failed for that matter, and look ahead to what changes are likely to prove permanent. So, Emma, ladies first, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. Great to see you this morning. Really appreciate your patience and being with us as well. The lockdown and the subsequent global travel restrictions have, we know well, hit tourism hard, hit food and beverage sector equally hard as well. How hard has it been for the group? How hard has it been for Hilton here in the Middle East?
Well, naturally, it's been a very, very difficult and challenging time for all sectors, especially, anything to do with travel and tourism and hospitality has been particularly challenging. Naturally, Hilton is used to opening hotels and, to happen so fast around February. We'd seen some indicators from our colleagues in Asia Pacific, but to actually have to close a larger majority of our hotels so swiftly was a shock to the system. However, we are very fortunate to work with local governments and entities across the EMEA region and actually utilise our hotels in a variety of different manners, which of course was a first for us, using hotels for quarantine, guest safety, hospitalisation across EMEA, and we worked with local entities to do that. So that was a first. But as we've moved now into the recovery, and I'm delighted to see the STR results for this region today showing the best performing month since last February, which is incredibly encouraging. Broken on your show earlier on, Tom. We actually looked at the pandemic and actually took a series of measures. We were it was very clear from our research that if customers and guests were to return and travel, safety, security and hygiene were absolutely paramount. So we worked very hard during the initial lockdown period with our global colleagues, both at corporate and property level, and we created, in collaboration with Harvey, which are the makers of Dettol and Lysol, and the world-renowned Mayo Clinic, our Hilton Clean Stay programme. Now, obviously, hotels have a high standard of cleanliness in place already, but we actually moved to a heightened hospital grade standard of cleanliness, which was the first pivot for us was actually to take the step to actually show visible cleaning in guest-facing and public areas during busy periods of the hotel. So normally done in the deepest, darkest hours, we actually felt that, and our guests responded incredibly well to that. We put in place our Clean Stay seal on our bedroom doors. So now if you check into a hotel, and I'm sure some of your listeners may have done that on an enjoyable staycation here in the UAE, you break a seal, and when you enter the bedroom has been cleaned to the standards of this new programme. And there's 10 particular touch points which are really, really focused on, such as light switch, door handles, TV controls. So, and then we also put in the Hilton Event Ready programme, which I'm happy to touch on later because it talks about meetings and events and the combination of physical and digital. And we did some other programmes such as Workspace, which I'll touch on later if you come into the area of meetings and events.
No, I just want one thing I pick up on, if that's okay with you, is just the compare and contrast, because obviously you're a global brand. And again, it's difficult to compare and contrast during these times. I think every region has been hit hard. But how did we, in this region, the GCC region, maybe even the Middle East region as a whole, fare? Did we fare better than most in your sector?
I think what we saw was a wave across. So we saw, APAC hit hardest first and then go into recovery, and similarly with Europe and Middle East, and then the States. Then we saw recovery in this region. But as we know, we're actually undergoing a second wave at the moment. So while we saw some initial recovery, we've seen some areas in the UK and Europe, unfortunately, go into lockdown. However, as the recovery period continues, we're now starting to see parts of Europe and the UK and the much welcome travel corridor between the UAE and UK, which is much talked about. So we're now starting to see a real push on our recovery. We've been massively encouraged by the results, particularly here in the UAE, with staycation and really fantastic support from our loyal residents, to the point that actually this morning, for the first time ever, we've announced our an extension of our Hilton Honours loyalty program, which for the first time ever, launching this morning, we are extending that Hilton Honours program to include discount on food and beverage, and guests can enjoy 25% off food and beverage, even if they're not staying in the hotel, if they're a member of the award-winning Hilton Honours program. So, you know, we've actually seen that, you know, we've got a real loyal following from local residents, and actually we want to respond and reward those guests who are staying in our properties or indeed walking in and visiting us for a food and beverage experience. So, you know, I see that we really see the recovery. I think the authorities here in this region, to answer your question, Tom, have been absolutely outstanding in their response, and I think everybody who lives in this region has been so I would say confident and reassured with the recovery. So yes, the STR results today are encouraging, and I think that we will bounce back very strong. There is a pent-up demand. I mean, I'm flying tomorrow on one of your 777s you mentioned earlier. I confirmed my seat yesterday, and the plane is busy. So, yeah, I think we're going to fare very well, and we're going to bounce back. And I think in this region, the government has done an outstanding job to reassure both local and international travellers to the region that Dubai is open and ready for business, and so are we at Hilton.
I'm going to bring Tom and Ahmad in just a few seconds. Fellas, thank you so much indeed for being so patient with us. Just one quick final one before we move on, though, with you, Emma, if I may, because I mentioned that we're getting a number of questions coming through from our exclusive viewers for this series. Alessandro Denipotti has been in touch with us. Good morning to you, Alessandro. Thank you very much indeed for being in touch. And it relates to pivots, Emma, so that's why I just wanted to ask you this, because, yeah, we've seen the beginning of a number of pivots, we've seen the middles, maybe we haven't seen the ends as yet. I think you've partly answered this already by you know, when you were talking to us about cleaning during the daytime, cleaning in front of other people, etc., being very transparent and visual. But Alessandro's question to you is, at Hilton, what were your very first steps at the beginning of the crisis when it came to the need to pivot?
Well, our very first steps were to protect the health and safety of our team members and our guests, because we naturally had hotels that were operating. We had guests staying in properties. We had team members. So we immediately, our safety and security teams, you know, they were absolutely fantastic, because we have, you know, in EMEA, we cover so many local governments and entities, plus we had the COVID spreading at different rates throughout. So the first priority was to protect the safety of our guests and our team members. The second priority was to respond to the government regulations, but also the market conditions, and work with our stakeholders and our ownership to protect their businesses. So we took opportunities where we had safe and secure opportunities to trade the hotel for particular reasons. And in areas where there were lockdown, we worked with our teams and our owners to protect the safety of the people on the property, but also to protect the business from our owners, for our owners going forward as well. So, you know, we really did have to work on the hoof. We've never had to write so many closing down protocols. And then we immediately set to writing new opening protocols. So I hope that answers Alessandro's question.
Indeed, bless you. Right, Mr. Harvey, let's move to you, because Tom, for any regular listener to the Business Breakfast will know, has been a regular guest. He has been called on many times during the pandemic by the team at the Business Breakfast, partly because I think all of us, Tom, watched as other countries experienced supermarket shortages. Everything from loo paper to yeast to sourdough bread was flying off shelves left, right and centre, its value going through the roof. But we didn't see anything like that here. We didn't see any sellouts here. How did you and your team manage to keep up with the increase in demand?
So we had I guess we had a little bit of a helping hand in terms of the early start that we got with some of the warning signs. So things like hand sanitizer was already increasing in demand from January, February, before we hit the big panic buying. So that did give us a few clues as to what we thought we might need to do from the start. but it was also about taking a little bit of a different approach to how we would measure whether something was in stock or out of stock. So whereas before, if we had multiple brands of tinned tomatoes, for example, we'd be looking to make sure every single brand was in stock. We realized customers just want tinned tomatoes. So providing we've got one brand, we're going to say that we're okay with that. So those were some of the sort of the really key elements. We were on top of the numbers day in, day out, hour in, hour out. We changed how we were reporting on numbers so that we could actually see what was going on during day, so that we could try and respond as quickly as possible.
Obviously, you are in control of certain elements to a certain degree, but there are other changes going on around you as well, and trying to map those changes and those change in behaviours during a pandemic is probably a bit tougher than it is during an average calendar year. What sort of type of changes were you able to see in shopping behaviours? And did we see those in the early weeks during the uncertainty, or did we see them manifest themselves further on down the pandemic?
So in terms of the behaviours that changed, it was very much about people shopping far less frequently and buying a great deal more. But also, we talk a lot about share of stomach. And so some of the products that people were buying would almost become a little bit of a surprise. We were in an economically constrained time, but actually because people couldn't go to a restaurant, they were coming to Spinneys to buy the food that was the best quality they could possibly get and try and recreate the restaurant experience at home. So it was things like big increases in organic, which is probably also because people were thinking about their health more so, but certainly premium has been a big area of growth for us this year.
Well, certainly one thing, obviously the focus of what we're talking about here is the pivot as well. And I mean, just judging by what you were saying there, Tom, and what we observed as well, supermarkets seem to be one of the sort of few sectors that didn't seem to struggle through those early days. Yeah, I know there were definitely challenges with supply chain, etc. But I mean, did you need to pivot? Did you need to think on your feet?
Yeah, we definitely needed to pivot. There were still an enormous number of things that were changing for us on a daily basis and almost an hourly basis. And we got different challenges, even different emirates and different regulations. So we had to pivot within our store operations just to make sure that we could be compliant with all of the laws that the different emirates had. But certainly, customers changed. How they shopped changed. So we absolutely had to pivot to meet their needs. There were restrictions on who could go out shopping. There was that period where anybody over 60 was not allowed out of the house. And so we had to pivot to make sure that we could actually continue to serve them by letting them phone ahead with their orders and then delivering it to the boot of their car until we got the Spinneys.com website up and running.
Tom, stay with us. We're going to come back to you in a few moments' time. We've got loads of questions coming through for you, so we're just going to filter through those and then address a few of those with you. Conscious of time, though, so we're going to bring Ahmad into the conversation as well. Huge thanks to Ahmad and all the team at Cisco. And Ahmad, at Cisco, I mean, you guys had something of a head start on the rest of us in many ways because you were facilitating pivots. In particular, every single time people needed to digitalize or communicate via Webex. But from where you sat during these fascinating times as head of collaboration for the region, you must have had a really good sense as to how companies right here in the region realigned their businesses. Is that the case? What type of companies had to pivot the most, do you think?
Well, I have to say that during these difficult times, actually, we're still having these difficult times, but I go back to April, March, and May, and June timeframes, and I cannot tell you any exception in terms of the number of organizations, type of organizations from different verticals, governments, utilities, healthcare, education, name it. All of them wanted to be as quickly as possible on the platform. Actually, I would say from my experience, I've seen healthcare at the top of the list, trying to adopt, trying to meet the huge demand on their services. And actually, one of the main challenges that we face is that most of these customers wanted to be on the platform in no time. So we decided to go with a strategy of building bridges with all of our customers, to tell them that we're ready to bridge with all what you have, from devices, from existing setup, from existing platforms, from any process, applications, and HR, business, where you could connect with our platform as Webex. We'll ensure that the end user is on top of our list. So winning the end user heart was really, really crucial. And helping them with the consumption by giving almost more than 3,500 enterprises in the region with our solution to be able to, to address the challenge. So I would say there's no exception in terms of segmentation or verticals. We have seen everybody. Actually, personally, I remember these days, sleepless days, as actually dealing with individuals, VIPs, wanted to conduct their business, and they cannot wait for internal processes. They need to be on the system in no time. So I think there was no exception. Everybody wanted to go to the market, react, address their end users' needs, their customers' needs in no time.
That's interesting. So it was across the board, and that demand for change across the board. But if you had to sort of look into the sectors or the businesses or the industries that found it hardest, or possibly are still finding it hardest to pivot at the moment, could you give us an indication of that?
Well, yeah, I think maybe Emma would agree with me. The tourism, hospitality, entertainment, the physical entertainment. It was really even physical activities and fitnesses found it at the beginning hard really to adapt, because you really need to address many criterias in this adoption. But I think with time, the organizations that managed to really transform and get to the pivot in no time managed to go back to the market. I've read interesting stories about hotels offering daytime rates for their rooms to become your work home office for a lot of individuals, which was really amazing, because we've never been prepared for such a pandemic. Most of us, we live in big houses, small houses, so we could not have everything ready for that. So and it depends on the nature of your job. So it is really interesting to see a lot of businesses manage. They found it hard at the beginning, but they managed. 5G and Wi-Fi 6 helped a lot of businesses, especially in entertainment and tourism, to bring the outdoor, the outside, the touristic destinations to the end users through augmented reality and virtual reality in no time. So I would say hospitality, restaurants, entertainment, physical entertainment actually found it the hardest at the beginning.
Going to come back to you with more questions, but conscious of time, so we're going to move on to the next topic for discussion, and that is, of course, as we mentioned at the beginning, the new normal, the new norm. Nearly, dare I say it, a year into the pandemic already. Good time, I think, to look at what's changed in and for the medium term here. How people have developed those pivots, those original pivots for what we like to call this COVID era at the moment. We can't say post-COVID, that's for sure. We can't say pre-COVID, so just the COVID era. So the gap between the initial panic and when the vaccines became more widely available. Let's go back to Emma Banks, who's with us here. Emma, as the border closures continued, and obviously that created an element of panic as well for many, but tourism couldn't bounce back as quickly because of physical barriers in the way. So how did you and your team go on to make those difficult decisions when it came to the realignment of your business within the Hilton Group, simultaneously pivoting and protecting those all-important revenue streams?
Well, yes, I think like any business, we had to protect the interests of our owners and our stakeholders. So, while we did have to take certain cost-cutting measures, like anybody in the hospitality, tourism and the travel business, we actually worked as hard as we could. First of all, Hilton, again, we cover so many geographies and jurisdictions, and naturally where there was government legislative supportive programs, we capitalized on it. Our senior leaders in Hilton were very much involved in lobbying and talking to governments about how we could protect as many employees and people within the hospitality sector. And I'm very pleased to say that our president here in EMEA was very much at the forefront of that. Naturally, it has been tough, but what we tried to do was actually protect as much talent as possible using schemes such as that, so that we could be ready for when the recovery will and does happen, that we're ready to bounce back and capture every opportunity. I do feel, as our leadership does say, that now we did have to take some tough decisions. We did it with owners and team member welfare at the heart, but we feel very, very, very strong now. Hilton feels ready for the next 100 years ahead of us, and we feel in a very, very strong position that when as you say, the recovery does happen, we're still going through the COVID era, we're ready to capture every opportunity. However, saying that, I'm pretty excited about the amount of innovation we're putting in our business, both in our hotels, and Ahmed mentioned workspace. Hilton has embraced that trend. We're looking at Hilton Event Ready, which is a new elevated event program, both physical and digital, or to use another word that you guys use on your program, phygital. Listening, I am, Tom. But, the phygital space, and Hilton has put in Hilton Event Ready, which again is a fantastic program. And the event organizer actually is the one that breaks the seal on the event room, and even for big ballrooms. So we're excited about that. And indeed, if we come on to touching on some of the innovation we've done in the food and beverage field, I'm happy to talk about that as well as we move through this pandemic and recovery period.
I want to talk about that.
I feel a little bit selfish because you know well that I like a lunch, Emma, as do so many here in the region. And not just those that come and stay in your properties, but also the communities that call the UAE home. So talk to me about restaurants. Obviously, an imperative, very important vertical within your business. How have they had to adjust or readjust?
Well, as an organisation, we have really we've not wasted a crisis, and we've really carried out some really good innovation. And in terms of the our restaurant and bars, with guests maybe not staying to the levels that we've previously enjoyed, we've seen that people still want to come out and enjoy a great restaurant or bar experience. So initially, it was pretty tough. Measures were tough around. We had to adapt to the new physical distancing measures, and it was initially 2 meters. It was 2 meters in the UAE, but we had countries saying 3 meters and then going back to 1.5. We had some saying 1. So we had to adapt in all our different regions with the new physical distancing measures, and naturally we had to help and support the properties with their layouts, because it's not just the restaurants and bars, it's the lobby areas, public spaces. Also, initially, and I've been on your show and written articles about the much-loved breakfast buffet, and some people call the buffet is dead. And I remember going on your show and saying, no, the buffet is not dead. There's a new heightened level of cleanliness and a new modus operandi for the buffet, but the buffet is not dead. And we've seen buffets pivot to guests being served by assistants, more live cooking stations, more a la carte, more bringing baskets and offerings to the table in terms of the buffet. And indeed, we've seen in APAC a full return to guests enjoying a beautiful buffets. And similarly, Brunch has made a recovery, but not in perhaps the brunches we've known of the past. We're still complying with all the legislation and physical distancing. But, for example, at the Bull of Wall Street, which is one of our restaurants, the Bull and Bear in DIFC, not from where you are, at the Waldorf Astoria, we launched the first ever brunch in that restaurant during our in these COVID times, and we have had to put in entertainment measures that are safe but entertaining for our guests to ensure sure that they still have a great brunch experience. And we've actually found that some of the measures we've put in that moved away from the traditional brunch before, such as entertainment via the team members, they create the theatre, that brunch is absolutely smashing it. So, you know, also pop-ups. The COVID era has created in the summer in Europe, and now as we've moved into the cooler climes in the winter, the pop-up space. So, you know, trucks, pop-up restaurants, pop-up areas in hotel properties. Hotels have got lots of beautiful gardens and beachside areas. So we're seeing the rise of the pop-up, which allows for more covers, more physical distancing, and the perception for guests that outdoors is safer, and why not enjoy these beautiful winter months. So pop-up was popular before, but I think it's going to grow even more as people like to enjoy and feel safer outside while they're dining.
Yeah, really appreciate those insights as well. And great idea. I might go and see Luigi straight after this one. He's just over the road, isn't he? So moving on from that, because one thing I must do, and it's just reminded me, is put my next online delivery in from Spinneys. Because, Tom, just to bring you back into the mix here, I mean, we're talking about the new norm. And what, the beginning of this year, you weren't able to deliver Spinneys, well, you weren't allowed to order Spinneys online. You've been able to deliver the delivery arm of Spinneys in an extraordinary short period of time and make it very, very efficient. How did you manage to develop that offering so quickly?
Well, we broadly did it without going to sleep very often and working every weekend. The Spinneys.com is something that we had been looking at for quite a long time. And I know that we wouldn't be the only retailer over the last 10 or 15 years that's procrastinated about the profitability and the viability of a .com food service. But ultimately, we got to the point where we said, this is something our customers are absolutely insisting on. We are not going to be relevant for our customers in the future if we don't do this now. And at a future time, we'll work out how we turn this into something that is long-term economically viable for us. But it was 8 weeks from when we signed and said, yeah, we're definitely going to do this, to when the first deliveries actually rolled out into customers' homes. So we were at that stage. Everybody was working an enormous number of hours a day, and we were all working 7 days a week because we just had to make sure that we were doing everything we can to look after our customers.
Ahmad, just to bring you into the mix of the new norm, if you like, do you have any examples to hand, Ahmad, of companies that have successfully pivoted in the medium term, if you like, and settled into the so-called new norm?
The readiness to go and adopt the new way of work. I can tell you that with Expo, we managed to work with them closely and customer experience team to move more than 2,000 knowledge workers, actually force employees, to work from home, fully loaded with the collaboration tools to engage, to collaborate, share files, connect with the ecosystem. You could imagine the Expo 2020, the core of their daily task is to connect with the surrounding ecosystem. So moving 2,000 employees be fully enabled in our collaboration platform, and actually increasing their Webex capacity from 300 concurrent sessions to more than 8,000 concurrent sessions, so they could really keep going and drive their business as planned. Expo managed to do that because they were from the early adopters of the technology. They believed in that. They have their offices fully enabled with our digital platform and devices, because collaboration or digital transformation of the workplace is beyond the end user only. It covers the places, the assets, the data, the people, the processes. And imagine you walk into one of their offices and the device will tell you you are an additional participant to a COVID-19 controlled room. So you have to leave because the system is cognitive, intelligent enough to count how many people in the room and ask you politely to use another room and give you a digital map where you could follow up with your mobile and reach your next destination, or you just join from your mobile. So yeah, Expo actually managed to go there in no time. I can also talk about Saha in Abu Dhabi, where they really managed to to transform the patient experience from appointment booking to actually visiting your room virtually before you go there. Interact with the smart self-service bots to get your data, your lab results, to get your feedback and interact with all the stakeholders that are responsible about your case, from a lab technician, from a nurse, from a doctor, from a prof outside the borders. Amazing use cases I have seen in this region, especially in Dubai.
So follow-up question to that, Ahmad, maybe one that would interest all of our panelists out there. How much of that success do you think is down to the individuals, to the CEOs, the C-suite leaders in this organizations with that readiness to adapt to these new norms?
Well, it is instrumental. I've seen most of the cases I have been engaged in is driven mainly by the CEOs and the top leadership. Because as I said, being onboarded in a virtual platform is not enough. A process in place, a clear direction on how you should use that, on your timing, from an HR point of view, coming all the way from the top is instrumental to drive this successfully. So in most of the cases I have seen, the CEOs are the main drivers. Actually, as I told you, I've been fortunate. Well, it was a tough time, but that gave me visibility and access to a lot of people on the leadership level, sharing with me their wish list and what they want to do to protect their employees, make sure that they're conducting the business in safe environments, ensure they're connected to their families, and bear in mind their working from home environments. And this is definitely comes always from the top. And then we work with them to bring that down to the employees and integrate with their business applications, to the level of building management, to the level of the finance systems, name it. So again, the transformation, a real transformation of a workplace has to be done based on a full coordination and alignment with the top leadership of any successful organization. Without that, it's going to be really difficult.
We are now going to sort of move the conversation forward to the personal pivot, the double P that we are now bringing to the mix. It's interesting to see a lot of questions coming in from the audience on that chat box. So thanks, keep those coming in to us. A lot of people wanted to know about the balance between human psychology, human hopes and fears, and of course that all-important pivot, a lot often taken by CEOs, but quite a corporate approach as well. So we're going to get the thoughts of all of our panelists on this one. Tom, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay, and then come back to Emma straight afterwards, because look, it's been a hard year for just about everybody. It's been a hard year for many organizations. Has it been a hard year for you, given that sort of human interaction, given the dependency on a brand like Spinneys and Waitrose, or has it been a rewarding one for you?
I think it's been both. I mean, without a doubt, it's been hard in terms of the sacrifices, the number of hours I've spent working rather than with my family. But without a doubt, overall, it has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my entire career. We've learned both within the board and the rest of the team at Spinneys, we've learned an enormous amount about ourselves, about how well we work as a team, and just how much passion there is in the company for each other and supporting us, as well as how we can do things incredibly quickly for our customers when we put our minds to it. And we have been fortunate. We've been one of the successful businesses. We've not had to make any difficult decisions about colleagues and letting them go. In fact, we've been able to really support and recruit more with Spinneys.com and everything we've done with that. So it has been the most fantastic learning experience I've ever had.
Emma, tough year for so many people out there. Must have been one of the hardest periods of your career as well. Talk to me about your sort of personal pivots, if we can. How did you personally pivot your leadership style to support your team?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing was I was kind of a bit sent home on, I think it was in February. I just returned from Amsterdam and sent home, and I kind of said to my team, oh, okay, well, we'll just meet in coffee shops if we can, you know. And 24 hours later, I was like, no, this is really a different matter. And our CEO, Chris Lasseter, got his Hilton leadership group on a call, and, you know, obviously I remember his words very clearly. He said, you know, what will happen is we will come out of this stronger as a team. And I thought, gracious me, how can he mean that? You know, we've got 350 of the top leaders in Hilton all over the globe. I've got my team all over EMEA. How are we going to come out stronger? We've never done this 100% virtual. You know, I fly more thousands of miles than I can care to imagine, and I had to personally change. The first thing was, you know, as a leader, I had to, you know, and to quote our president of EMEA's words is, you know, steady hands on the wheel. You know, I couldn't, although inside I was in complete turmoil, you know, is my daughter, what's going to happen about my daughter? She's sitting GCSEs, my husband's job. But in terms of a leader, so it had to be, you know, you had to be strong, reassuring. You had to be honest, you know. I had to tell my team I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what was going to happen over furlough. I didn't know what was going to happen over people's jobs. We didn't know how long this was going to last. So it was about being honest, but actually being there, being trusting, being open. And you know, this whole new world of webinars. And the first thing I had to do with my team was I had to, you know, we were shutting hotels. I had to respond to the new requirements of the hotels, the new protocols, write the programs, clean stay. Was the first thing I had to do was, first of all, was to tell my team whatever our priorities were before they changed. And we agreed priorities because I wanted them just focused on what was important. So we agreed priorities. I then agreed, because we've got all different time zones in my region and people are working different hours with the new COVID era, I agreed the times that we would organise structured meetings of the day in each market so that it was respectful and timely. So I had, you know, so it was kind of 4 or 5 core hours of the day where in Europe, UK, Middle East and Africa, we could all schedule meetings. If people chose to have webinars and conferences outside, that would be the employee's personal choice. So we tried to be respectful of people's time. The reality is the team worked 24/7, 365 for quite a while to put in place all these new programs. Yes, webinars became relentless, and it was about making sure that I was conscious of that. You know, I said to my team, if you don't want to put the camera on today, that's fine. You know, there was nice sides to it. There was the human side. You know, people had to cope with my 5 rescue animals bobbing around the house. I met other people's children on webinar. I met other people's dogs. I got shown the tropical fish tank of one of my team members. There was a human side to it. A positive, and I'm sure Ahmad will be happy to hear this, is now I've got colleagues all over the world. When we come out of this and we go into recovery and we're traveling and we're meeting face to face again, instead of, I will still continue to use the video screen because I do feel much more connected. That naturally it's easy to pick up the phone as well, but I actually like to, you know, call people and see them face to face because you do feel you've had that touch. It has been fairly relentless, and it does get tiring. And you know, there is a lot of research going out at the moment about the brutal, you know, this constant webinars back to back. You know, I do try and encourage my team to take breaks, physical activity rather than just sitting chained to a screen, and I try and lead by example in that area. I try to be respectful of their times. And the interesting thing we did is we had a lot of teams events, having drinks as a team on the screen at the end of the week. Also, we did a lot of, with the team members in the hotels, we did a lot of Insta stories. So our best mixologists, baristas and chefs, we actually got them doing live Insta stories on our Taste of Hilton Instagram account so that they could, you know, so we could connect with our team members in our properties. The other thing we do is we have an annual culinary and mixology competition called Flavour and Flair, and the winners travel. We're actually, for the first time ever, doing that over a virtual webinars competition. So another pivot there. But I think the key thing was to be a transparent, honest, accessible. And I think the big thing that I think all CEOs and all leaders will say that this has been the era where you were to show that you were a person, you had emotionals, you didn't have all the answers, and you at times felt weak yourself personally, and there was a real human side to you as a leader. And I can safely say, I've had a lot of tears on webinars myself, okay? So, you know, and as I'm sure a lot of leaders would confess as well. So I think it's been an era to be kind, to be considerate, and to be human and authentic and real. And I think those are the leaders that are really going to shine through this as we move into the next post-COVID era.
It really does, yeah, and that really gives insight into the sort of personal side of what has been a very tough time for so many. So really appreciate your honesty there, and I'm sure honesty that is shared with many out there. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I just want to get to, rather than me just ask all the questions, get to a couple of the questions that are coming through from our audience for our panelists. Ahmed, I am going to come to you. This is a question that come through from Francis John for you, because we want to go into sort of post-COVID now, if we can, as we look into the post-COVID world, the one we're all looking forward to once the vaccines start having an impact. How do you decide which bits of your business to keep and which are now past their sell-by date? A couple of questions that are coming through with respect to that one as well. Ahmed, one from Francis John, which asks, from what you're seeing in your role as the head of collaboration at Cisco, to what extent do you think digitalization is going to be the new permanent norm?
My engagement experience with the business is discussing with us, myself, my team, about the requirements. And in every single case, we want to go for a permanent solution. It's not a temporary solution. As Emma reflected, you know what? It is working. Let's use the times to work using the webinars, the platform, and we can always invest time and money on activities can really, fuel the morale and the energy of the team, and do things that matters with unique customer meetings that requires physical attention and attendance. So I totally believe, and this is not only my personal impression, it is based on my experience with different segments from healthcare, education, oil and gas, utilities. They had experience that difficult times have been through. So they decided to adopt and go with the same way, like many, as I mentioned, Expo 2020, Saha, SEC in Saudi, they realized they have to be ahead of the game, even pre-COVID-19, to be equipped with the infrastructure that is capable of taking them to the virtual work environment whenever they need. So I think it's the norm. It's going to be like that. It is just how we're going to do it. It is about integrating our business applications with the platform, because it's going to be integral part of it. It's not going to be an isolated part.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. Tom, question that's come through for you from Francis John again. To what extent do you think the pivot from brick and mortar business models to the online apps and platforms is going to be the new permanent norm? And I just wanted to ask that of you first, because I appreciate that we talked about the online delivery that you've brought, but also bringing the app and launching the app and the amount of investment that you've put into the app in recent times. How much of your business now takes place online over the app?
Well, for us, it represents about 4% of our business now. It is growing very rapidly, and if I look more globally to supermarkets elsewhere in the world, .com is a bigger part in, say, Europe, where it may be as much as 15%. But we need to be very clear about this, and .com is not as developed in the UAE in all retailers as it is in other markets. It's growing fast, but every single supermarket that has a .com and a bricks and mortar operation, the bricks and mortar is still by a long way the biggest part of the business, and I expect that to continue for a very, very long time to come.
And in terms of the sort of wider picture, Tom, changes. What changes in shopping habits do you expect to continue? Do you expect to last into the future? Are customers going to be more interested in the source of their food or in hygiene?
From when we signed and said, yeah, we're definitely going to do this, to when the first deliveries actually rolled out into customers' homes. So we were at that stage. Everybody was working an enormous number of hours a day, and we were all working 7 days a week, because we just had to make sure that we were doing everything we can to look after our customers.
Emma, questions coming through for you as well. Devaraj has been in touch with us. Wants to ask a question of you about social changes, if we can. Do you think there is the willpower among the public to revamp social life at the moment? Do you think that they will travel again? Do you think they're going to go to crowded restaurants? Do you think they are going to browse a, dare I say it, breakfast buffet?
Well, yes, because all our research is showing that customers want it. I mean, in terms of the breakfast buffet, I mean, I think you know, we talked about trends and social trends, and one of the biggest trends growing now is, you know, you mentioned to Tom about hygiene, authenticity, origin of food, but another thing toppermost mind in people's minds is waste. And the breakfast buffet is now moving to a more curated alimony lifestyle station, but also individual portioned little nice pots and grab and go, and very much smaller portions that are replenished more regularly, so you get fresher food but less waste. The buffet, the indications are showing, you know, we've got thousands of properties. Hilton's got over 6,000 properties. So has all the other big hospitality companies in the world. You know, at the moment, hotels of the future may be built with slightly different design buffet rooms and breakfast rooms. But the reality is that, you know, it's an efficient way to safely and customers enjoy the breakfast experience. But certainly they will be more curated. They will be more alimony, they will be less wasteful, there'll be more live stations, there'll be less self-serving and more served. But certainly the indication in recovering countries is that the buffet has returned. Interestingly, at an event last week, the first thing one of the guests said to me, as I sat down and got introduced to somebody, she said, "Oh, please tell me breakfast is going to return. I love all the efforts you're doing, but I really want to go back to what And this lady was particularly slim and petite, but she did talk about how much she did enjoy getting tucked into a buffet. So while I think it has changed, it will not go away. It's a model that can't just be, you know, all those properties in the world have got big breakfast stations in them. They are remodeling and reworking how they do it. In terms of, yes, I do believe customers are ready to go out. We have restaurants in the UK now that are fully booked for the evening of the 3rd of December with the new social distance, and were before lockdown. You know, we are social creatures. We cover to be, you know, in meeting and socialising, enjoying time with friends and family. Naturally, I don't think we're going to return to how it was before. You know, people are going to be a lot more conscious about spacing, and, you know, as hoteliers and as restaurateurs, we will be very conscious of that. I do think restaurant design will be much more about using, you know, spacing, lighting, planters, art, sculpture, to create a great environment, but a safe environment. But we do actually all want to go out, and the indicators are we are all looking forward to socialising once again. I attended 2 huge events last week that you hosted, Tom, and I certainly could say, and you were doing a great job of keeping everybody safe and on the narrow, as was all the attendees, but we certainly saw that people want to go out and enjoy physical events once again.
Certainly that demand. Listen, time is against us, my friends, so thank you so much indeed. We won't take any more of your time up. Apologies to all those questions we haven't been able to answer in the time frame allotted, but there will be other opportunities in forthcoming sessions of this great series. So a huge thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in. Thanks also to our 3 panellists who really have gone above and beyond and brought us a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the floor. To you, Ahmad Zureiki, the Head of Collaboration for Cisco Middle East and Africa. We thank you, sir, for your time this morning, but also all the expertise you've brought to the floor. So, Ahmad, thank you so much indeed for joining us. Thanks also to the General Manager in the commercial sector for Spinneys Dubai LLC. He's been an absolute Trojan with us on the Business Breakfast throughout the course of the pandemic. He's been a Trojan again this morning as well, battling with all things technology. Tom Harvey, I doff my cap to you, sir. Thank you very much indeed for everything, Tom. Great to see you as always. And last but certainly not least, the Vice President of F&B Strategy and Development for Europe, Middle East and Africa for Hilton, Emma Banks. Banksy, thank you so much indeed, Emma, for being with us. Really appreciate all your time. Thank you again. Thanks to all the team for being with us. Thanks to all the team at Cisco Webex for making this one possible. And thanks again to all of our partners. We'll be back with more in the series in the coming weeks, so make sure you stay tuned to all our social media channels to find out more. Now, from all the team down here at Nasdaq Dubai, goodbye.